Staff appreciation as a concept often serves as the butt of jokes in social media or as a catalyst for the ire of fed up employees towards their employers. You would think that with where the labor markets and social media puts the matter, companies that could do so would up their game. But sure enough, as true as time could test, employers just refuse to, well, you already know. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. We've all been subject to the cheap, tokenistic acts that come with the proverbial Staff Appreciation Day. And I say day because one day is typically as far as it goes. The trivial pizza party, maybe a $2 scratch off with a payday bar, a sticky with a note that reads, "You're awesome." And if companies really want to go nuts, a catered dinner with a motivational speaker. First appearing in 1995 as the brainchild of one Bob Nelson, a motivational speaker among many other things, some speculate that the National Staff Appreciation Day, or more appropriately, Employee Appreciation Day, was a response to the grumblings of National Bosses Day held in October of each year. Staff Appreciation Day typically falls on March 1st and, as we all know, goes largely or under-acknowledged by many employers, and not because they purposely want to avoid it, but because staff appreciation as a general concept almost always seems to drop off the list of priorities as a company grows. Many employers would argue that this is because of costs. But we all know that's just not true with very few exceptions. Since the rise of the commercial availability and popularity of the internet, and especially since the advent of social media, people everywhere have come to recognize patterns in employer-worker relations. Patterns where exploitation of any kind is just standard business practice, thus gradually forming a general consensus on how the labor force views employment as a general concept today. It starts with memes of how comically short employers come in showing any meaningful appreciation to their staff, and ends with a significant shift in labor force culture. A shift leaning in opposition to the norms of taking jobs from employers who seem to think that pizza is more of a show of appreciation than affording workers the ability to make rent without the need of government assistance. And as I said before, once an idea or concept instills itself into popular culture, it's almost impossible to undo. Now I say almost impossible because in this case, there is a way employers complaining about their inability to fill vacancies can steer the whole ship around and get workers back to heeding their every beck and call. And I'm going to give the best way that you as an employer can get this done. Here it is. Cash. Throw cash at us. The best way you want to turn the labor shortage or crisis or whatever the hell you want to call it around is simply by throwing cash at it. Where do you think the term sellout comes from? You can literally get anyone to do virtually anything if you pay them enough, and that is just the all too familiar way of the world. Andrew Carnegie sold his dominant monopoly over the entire steel industry only because JP Morgan offered to pay the outrageous price tag he asked Andrew Carnegie to make up, since there was no precedent over how much the entire steel industry should be sold for. The average worker doesn't get up and go to or log into work because their employer inspires them to generate the wealth they use to get into dildo rockets bound for space on a Tuesday just because. They do it because they need money. Money. You think these guys got up every day because their boss was so inspiring or their corporate mission was so compelling? No, they got up because the money was good. The money. Money to pay their liabilities on time. And yes, that includes credit card bills, daycare, and car insurance. Yes, money to enjoy nice things every now and again, like an occasional well-deserved steak, movie night with your friends, ice cream, or a visit to the local farm with the kids. And there's nothing wrong with that. Money to maybe put down on a home or start a business if you're up to that kind of challenge. Today, money to pay for the end-of-life care and basic needs of the elderly who outlive their retirement savings, while still holding on to the idea that meritocracy in the workplace still meaningfully exists, and that the generations they coddled and the economy they left them are just lazy and entitled. As the old saying goes, money talks, bullshit walks. Money is the universal language that everyone pays heed to, starting with myself. I work my job to get paid, and no matter what your take is or what your thoughts are on the topic, you do too. And as long as we do, we should earn enough money to pay for basic living expenses in today's money, not decades past. Now, just for a minute, let me play devil's advocate here from a business aspect. Paying an employee well means they are far less likely to take on side hustles. Despite all the compelling rhetoric from attractive influencers who nearly always end up trying to sell you an online training course, the average person doesn't want anything to do with drop shipping, crypto, flipping houses, or starting a side hustle of any kind. Most people want that steady work life with steady pay and steady time off, especially those who get a taste of the realities of hustle life and realize it's just not for them cognitively, emotionally, physically, or all of the above. And there's also nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting a steady job on a set schedule you can build a balanced life off of. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to be a boss or being the CEO of the next risky startup. Most people like routine and structure and are perfectly fine working for someone else. And judging them for it is just nonsense. Continuing the devil's advocacy theme, paying them well also means they will rely on you as their sole source of income, improving retention and compliance from workers who would be problematic otherwise. Paying well also means employees will be much more likely to tolerate the horrible managers you just can't seem to part ways with, no matter how much talent you lose because of them. Couple pay with giving a sense of partnership, belonging, and transparency to your employees while treating them like your most valued customer, you will see growth and success with few exceptions. And I say this because there are exceptions when dealing with the human race. You will always have some people who will be incompatible with your business no matter how much you pay them or how well you treat them. Years back, I worked for a network of doctor's offices that merged into one larger group led by a CEO who lived by the fish philosophy. Now, for those of you who don't know, I encourage you to look up the Seattle Fish Market /philosophy. It's basically a concept in finding ways to make the workplace fun for better morale in the workplace. Our CEO understood how important it was to keep staff morale as high as humanly possible for the best possible outcomes, especially being a customer service-based organization. He understood that social media and review boards make it so people will talk about your company for better or worse. And as we all know, most only bother talking when it's for the worse. He understood that the good doctor is not beyond reproach to the almighty complainers of the world, and that every single staffer, regardless of their role, can have a significant impact on the bottom line if he didn't play his cards right. And the man absolutely played his cards right in how he prioritized treatment and encouragement of staffers over the customer always being right, and kept it up for years, even making Forbes' top 50 best places to work. To be clear, it was the hard work of all the staff involved in the day-to-day of business that put the organization on that list, and not the CEO. But he was a great example of how much you can get out of your workers if you just pay, acknowledge, and treat them well. And he was staunchly consistent with it, at least luckily, while I was there. Now I'm going to name a few examples of things that they did to show appreciation to their workers and keep morale stupid high. And hopefully all the disgruntled employers who leave dislikes on my videos will take note. I'll start with the most obvious thing that most employers just seem to refuse to accept or even acknowledge, which is pay. Years ago, in an area where people in my role made an average of 12 to 14 an hour, they started me with 18 and extended the same above average pay to staffers in every role, whether it was medical or administrative, as I would find out later on. The idea was that this would pour the foundation for staff retention. Retention that significantly reduces waste associated with recruiting to fill positions that otherwise wouldn't need to be filled if you just paid enough. As some of you might know, the cost of recruiting often quickly gets outrageously expensive to fill a position you would far less likely need to fill if you just paid well to begin with. People are very likely to stay in and work a job they even hate if it pays well. Next was belonging. Fridays were dress down days, which was okay, but they also would block the last couple hours of the week for what they called fish fun, fish pertaining to the fish philosophy. It was a time to play whatever card or board games you wanted, or literally do whatever, like just watch funny shit on YouTube, which I look back on nostalgically because through that, my coworkers genuinely became my friends. Fridays were the shit. And this really helped dispel some of the corporate bottom line atmosphere that really shouldn't have a place in the medical setting, but unfortunately does. Now, you would think that this kind of cut in production time would have a negative impact on business, but it actually didn't. In fact, profits year after year were at a steady incline. And we knew this because they would share their quarterly earnings reports to all staff as a company policy, which was a potent show of transparency. Even though they absolutely didn't have to, being a private company, they would show how much money was brought in by department so everyone can get a sort of sense of their impact on the company. Now, in hindsight, I did find myself questioning the veracity of this, but even if it was a bogus tactic, it was a powerful tool in increasing morale and productivity because it essentially was like saying, here, look at what your hard work has contributed to our success. And while you're at it, here's a little something for a nice dinner out at Outback on us as a show of appreciation to you. And things like this really motivated me to do my job well and even go above and beyond often in things like covering at locations where they're short-staffed. And even this had its incentives. They would not only pay me mileage reimbursement, which is something most companies don't bother doing, especially for lower wage workers, they also paid me $20 in gas money for each visit, which was often up to 3 times a week. And even paid to have my brakes replaced without my asking for it after I mentioned my needing it to my coworker over lunch, who then told my manager, and so on and so on. In this rare case, going above and beyond for my job felt more like a partnership that paid out nice little side cash to take my lady out on the weekends or just have fun on the weekends. The company also put a lot of energy and resources into providing useful, meaningful benefits, and always seemed to have some new benefit for us every year. This included tuition reimbursement plus books on day one, which I took full advantage of for some time before I realized that my particular field of interest could be better learned for much less independently outside of the college setting. Now, to be very clear, I am in no way saying that college education is useless or meaningless, because it is absolutely critical if your goal is to be a professional that cannot exist without a degree, like an engineer, doctor, nurse, physicist, and I'm sure you get the point. I took an interest in media, which is a field where a portfolio bears just as much, if not more, weight than a degree, because a portfolio is a visual representation of your skill set and can potentially give a prospective employer not only the sense that you qualify, but the sense that they need you if your representation is impressive enough. Going further, they offer tickets at work, profit sharing, gift cards if you got called out by name on a review, gift cards if 5 of your coworkers put in writing that you're awesome, free gym membership, yearly massages, discounts to phone services, discounts to streaming services, and the list goes on and on and on. This was the first job I ever had in my whole life where I got up every day feeling at least indifferent about going to work, because let's be clear, no matter how much you love your job, we all have days where we just don't feel like it. Like my alarm goes off and I would sit up and think, okay, off to work. Instead of sitting up and thinking, fuck my life with this job. Working there was great until it eventually wasn't. Despite being a shining example of how awesome a company could be to their clients and staff while being profitable, the company did eventually take a gradual turn for the worse not long after our same awesome CEO sold the company to private equity, citing ambitions for interstate growth as his rationale. And to ease the overwhelming tensions and anxiety over what most of us understood as his sending the company to its demise, he handed out $1,000 checks to every staffer, $2,000 if you were there for 10 years or more. But despite this, I knew I had to start planning my exit. Months later, I left healthcare for a career in editing and never went back. Of course, all of the things you would expect to happen with private equity came to pass with massive layoffs, outsourcing an entire call center overseas, budget cuts turning even pizza parties into $2 scratch-offs with a payday bar, and the consolidation of all those awesome benefits outside of basic health and dental into a yearly company-wide dinner with a motivational speaker doing their absolute best to convince you that smiling is better than a yearly cost of living increase to pay your bills. It's heartbreaking, even now, to see a company I believed in and was so proud to work for being a shell of what it was, but also ironically not surprising, and a reminder that at the end of the day, these companies don't care about anything but profit. Even if a company has wonderful, true, and just beginnings, it only really takes one greedy asshole with enough of the right kind of pull, influence, or straight up decision-making power to steer the whole company into the same ocean of mud, and all while complaining, or at least wondering, why no one wants to work for their shitty wages and occasional pizza party. Wondering why there is such a lack of willingness, or at least enthusiasm, to let them exploit your labor for the accumulation of their wealth. Like it, agree with it, or not, the workforce culture has changed. And with employers now racing towards automation and AI, all dissenting opinions toward people refusing to take shitty wages from shitty bosses while still having to rely on government assistance despite getting up every day to work a full-time job will be moot anyway, because to an employer, the only thing better than paying minimum wage is paying minimum maintenance. We deserve better. Thanks to your support, I not only reached my goal of 100 subs by the end of May, I hit it threefold. And with your support in liking, subscribing, and sharing content of mine that you enjoy or find useful, I hope to reach my next goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of August. Now I'd like to hear from you. Tell me about your job experiences that stood out to you the most. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. And as always, thanks for watching. Peace.